I know it might sound stupid, but I was oblivious to end-of-life care. That's something I didn't fathom in my thoughts. My thoughts was to keep Jocelyn comfortable, keep Jocelyn happy, and maintain her well-being. Death was never in the picture. Even though it was coming, it was never really talked about. Until near the end I said, you know something, darling love, I don't think you're going to miss, I don't think you're going to beat this. And she said, yeah, I know. And that's the first time she admitted it. And then things started to hit home. And then she started planning. Aha, right.
The general term for having these conversations is called advanced care planning. I mean, advanced care planning is nothing more than the sum of all these conversations that you have with people. That's all that means. Why is that important? Well, the great potential benefit that we haven't proven, but we think, is that it brings the conversations forward and makes the opportunities for choices early. And we hope that people might be able to make some choices that otherwise at the last minute they could never have made, such as maybe to die at home. It's about what you do want, it's about your values, it's about sharing that with your family, and it's about that being there for you when it comes to the time to die.
The first thing is to ask yourself the simple question, would I be surprised if this person died in the next 12 months? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't be surprised, then it's time to have a conversation. And if you have the conversation with them, you give them the same chance that I had with my mum-in-law of actually having a different life for that time. If there are things they need to do and things they need to say, they get the chance to say that. And they have some understanding that time is short and time is really precious. And they'll live differently because of it.
I think that a very useful tool which I've begun using recently is the surprise question, where it's just asking myself in my mind, you know, would I be surprised if this patient passed away within the next 12 months' time? And I think it's both useful and from what I understand it's actually quite an accurate predictor of what's going to happen. Another indicator for when it is a good time to have the conversation, I think, is when somebody transitions from one care setting to another. So for example, if they're going from, particularly I think if they go from a home setting to an aged care setting, particularly if the level of care they're requiring is what we probably refer to as a high care level, I think that's it's a good time to have the conversation. And so I think it then becomes about how we have that conversation. How we have that conversation should be sensitive, it should be tailored to where that particular patient is, where their carers are, in terms of their understanding of where things are at. It's about being opportunistic, looking for those opportunities when it comes to being able to breach the topic of what are their goals in life. What are the things that they want as opposed to the things that we're trying to treat them for? So for example, if we're looking at a medication or starting another medication, about sending them off for an investigation or seeing a specialist, to ask the question or to have the conversation with them about that and say, well, why are we sending you off for this test? Why are we adding this medication? What is the goal that I'm trying to achieve through suggesting these things versus what are the things that you want? What are the things that your carers want when it comes to the goals that you have for the time that you have left?
You can't provide people choices unless you've given them the information to choose on the basis of. So if you have no conversation with somebody about their dying, you can't realistically offer them choice about it. I mean, one of the things we know is about 3/4 of people want to die at home. In reality, in New South Wales, it's about 10% who actually do. So we know that that's not happening. The bottom line is if we don't disclose what's happening to people, we can't offer them what they most want, which is a choice over what happens to them in future. So I think that a lot of people's reluctance to initiate a conversation which would go on is purely because they don't know how to have an opening line that doesn't sound like, oh, you're dying, what do you want to do about it? If you're initiating this conversation, say to them, in the event that you got really sick and couldn't speak for yourself, who would you like us to talk to? I don't think it implies anything about what's going to happen to you today or tomorrow, but it's the single most important question to ask. Because we work in a state where the substitute decision maker will talk for you They're legally obliged to. It's a unique situation in the world. So if you use that as your opening line with people, it's a non-threatening way forward. And the next thing you can say is, have you spoken to that person about the things that matter to you? And I think when you're badging the conversation, it's not about what aren't we going to do for you, which is how some people think of it. Oh, we're not going to resuscitate you, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. It's actually much more about, there's no time in your life where your values are more important for us to know than when you might be dying. Because that's when it really comes to, the push comes to shove in terms of the treatment you get, where your family are, where you live. All of your expectations are rolled up into that time. And I think that we must know more about you to treat you the way you want to be treated when that's the situation we're finding ourselves in. I think what people want is to have some sense that they'll have some control over what happens to them. And if you give them that, that's the antidote to the fear.
In modern medicine, as we've gotten better at treating diseases, we sometimes pretend that people don't actually die, but every single person is eventually going to die. And therefore, we all need to be skilled in having conversations with people at that time in their lives and with family members of people in that time of their lives, because it affects everyone.